Hey everyone, I'm so glad to have you all here today. Today I'm going to be talking about social emotional learning for gifted students and particularly becoming an advocate for the unique social emotional needs of our gifted students. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term SEL or maybe have just briefly learned about it or used it maybe in your classroom or at home, I thought it would be a great idea for me to show you a quick video that I find very helpful in understanding what this term really means.
There's a lot of talk these days about SEL, social emotional learning. But what exactly is it? Social emotional learning is the process of learning social and emotional skills, and it's just as important as learning reading or math. This learning process is most effective when it begins early and continues through high school. Social emotional skills are essential for success in school, work, and life. With SEL, students learn to manage their own emotions and behaviors, have empathy and show care and concern for others, solve problems effectively, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. Students learn to recognize what's happening inside them and to be aware of their emotions, which helps them deal with strong emotions and impulsive behaviors. It helps them stop, take a breath, and think about a situation before acting. Students learn to identify others' emotions and perspectives, which helps them empathize and show compassion, no matter who they are or what their background is. It's not difficult to imagine how this is important in the classroom and in life. Students learn to solve problems in peaceful ways and communicate assertively about what they need or want. This helps them get along with other students and get the help they need from adults. When students learn to make responsible decisions about their lives and their future, things can turn out better. Research shows social emotional learning makes a difference. Students who participate in SEL do better academically, have improved attitudes and behaviors, and act in delinquent or disruptive ways less often. In the United States, students with strong social-emotional competence are twice as likely to earn a college degree and nearly 50% more likely to graduate from high school and have a full-time job by age 25. Just as important, students who are socially and emotionally competent have more friends. This means they're more likely to feel connected to school and do well, and less likely to be left out or bullied. Simply put, by participating in social emotional learning, students learn the skills to succeed in every facet of school and the rest of their lives.
I hope you enjoyed that video and kind of have a better understanding for why social emotional learning is so important. So my name is Faith Harvey. I'm a graduate student in the Department of Educational Psychology at UGA. My main concentration is gifted education or gifted and creative education. I teach 5th grade and serve as grade chair at Winholt Elementary, which is a Title I school in Gwinnett County. This fall semester, my practicum work focused on my school's distinct need for social emotional learning, and particularly with our high ability students and their unique needs. And I can't wait to show you the things that I found and some great strategies that we can implement. So today what we're going to discuss is the social emotional human development and how we grow psychosocially. We're also going to talk about the impact of socioeconomic status on SEL. Then we're going to move into some strategies to implement and how we can use all the things that we're learning today to lead others, both in our school, in our home, and in our community. So the key elements of a scaffolding. I like to talk about this because scaffolding is typically used in education a lot. We use scaffolding when we talk about the way that we plan lessons. We use scaffolding when we talk about the way that we differentiate. But really, it's hard to imagine why we say that. So I like to look this up, and I found this really interesting. So the key elements of scaffolding are the standard, the ledger, and the transomes. The standards are the vertical tubes that transfer all the weight. And when I think about social emotional learning, I think about Erikson's stages of psychosocial development and how this is our standards, right? So when we think about scaffolding, Erikson's stages are what holds everything together. So I think it's really important for us to recognize that and understand these different stages of development, also how these stages of development may differ for our gifted students. So as you can see here, we have a timeline from infant to older adult. Each of these time periods come with a specific stage of psychosocial development developed by Erikson. So for most of us here, the children we serve in our lives will be within these stages. So take a look and think for a second if this seems accurate to you. For many of you, these stages may be right on point for the children in your life. However, some may have noticed that the children they are thinking of maybe fit into a stage much higher or much lower than the one on the chart shown. Well, it's not shocking, because based on some great evidence from some great articles that I have read, Howard, Hamilton, and Franks found that gifted adolescents are actually more likely to score at the identity scale of an adult. So you may have thought, the students I'm thinking of are definitely at a higher level on that chart than what is showing there for their age group. And so that makes sense. Another great quote that I found is that students who are able to answer the question, who am I? So students who are able to say, okay, this is who I am, and they're more likely to be able to answer where they want to go in life. And social context can play a huge role in these factors. So students are emerging identities throughout their lives. And gifted students have conflicting social demands, and these demands involve mixed societal messages that students have to interpret. So students get the message that they are different, often believe that being different is problematic and interferes with acceptance and their own personal development. Gifted students are expected to be humble, and they're often praised and criticized for their strengths at the same time. So they're doing great, but they speak out in class, and you're like, okay, you need to stop speaking out in class. But then we praise them when they do really well on a test. So they're constantly confused about where they need to be. Students believe that their unique beliefs and talents require outstanding performance at all times. So we tell them that they're so great at everything. When they start to do bad at something, like, how does that make them feel? Gifted students are often known for their achievements other than who they are as individuals. And a lot of this comes from that peer interaction. Coinciding with human development, we think about a child and who they're surrounded with. So a child is in part their family. Obviously, we know that they live with their family, and they can take on their culture wherever they're growing up. Maybe the level of discipline and support can impact that child. Children are also their community. And so that's like what they have access to, the schools they go to, the activities they find themselves attached to. And community connections give children a sense of belonging and help them develop social skills. So a student's family and community connections are often determined by a family's socioeconomic status. So how does socioeconomic status really actually play a factor? Well, child and adolescent development is influenced by factors that are familial and community-based. The need for policy and programs that support the social, emotional, and academic development of children is evident. So this came from actually a meta-analysis completed about socioeconomic status and child development, and it is actually one of the only ones developed that focuses directly on socioeconomic status and child development. So it shows just how little research there has been done. So here's our data. It is simple to see that we have a lot of poverty in Georgia. 10.3 million people live in Georgia, and 1.3 million people live in poverty in Georgia. So what does this mean? Well, it is clear that the effects of poverty on families' abilities to support their children's talent development and on children's ability to achieve are pronounced, complex, and pervasive. It is crucial that we provide them with programs that capitalize on their already developed abilities and develop those that they need. Think about that social emotional needs that are so evident, but that are currently undeveloped. So this actually came from a great article that I read too. It was called "Do We Change Gifted Children to Fit Gifted Programs, or Do We Change Gifted Program to Fit Gifted Children?" And this is definitely one that I think you should take a look at. So this brings us to the types of strategies that we should develop, that we should implement in our classrooms today. So it's important to encourage involvement in extracurricular activities, and this actually came from a text that I read in the summer of 2019. And involvement in clubs and teams provides opportunities for students to build a sense of self-efficacy and success. And this can often be difficult for teachers and administration to implement because whether it's transportation or things like that. But it's important to remember that encouraging these things allows students to have that opportunity to build self-efficacy, and also communicating with parents and making sure that these things are happening for their students. So another one is to facilitate discussion groups. Students crave acknowledgement and non-judgmental listening. So some example prompts that me and my colleagues kind of looked at through the text and also altered for our own students was an example prompt being, how do you define stereotype? What is the stereotype of a gifted student? How do you fit that stereotype and how not? So having these different discussions and allowing students to speak about how they're feeling can really help. Use reflections and journal prompts. So personal reflection encourages students to examine their motives related to their worldview, who they are, and what they hope to become. This would be a great way for students to be able to share how they're feeling without actually having to speak it in front of their friends. What we did at my school is create a journal where students could take the journal, drop it off at any of their teachers. And as most of you know, our gifted and talented students are constantly in between classes, whether it be that they're going to their focus group or they're going to an accelerated course or they're with their homeroom. And this is in 5th grade, but they're constantly changing rooms. And so being able to just drop that notebook off at any classroom and that teacher will be able to respond to them was actually a really great idea. So here are some 2 really great reads that actually helped me with this presentation overall, but also this entire year with my practicum. So this first book is called Understanding the Social and Emotional Lives of Gifted Students. And this is a great way to learn about the different types of social emotional needs that our gifted students have. Hearing about identity development, friends and family, different significant relationships, supporting this development, and then also looking at like those culturally diverse students and figuring out the needs that they have as well when it comes to gifted education. The next book that I took a lot of time focusing on was The Social Emotional Learning in the Brain. This book really had me thinking about the different things that we can do in our schools right away. So building teacher-student relationships, thinking about empathy, different types of responsible decision-making, and also about programs and how we need to make some big changes and the positive impacts that SEL can make when we implement that in our programs. So this brings me to one of the biggest and most important parts, and I hope that I have advocated for this enough to help you realize the importance of leading others. So this past year, I have done a lot of work of figuring out how I would lead my colleagues and create that impact, not just in my own classroom, but also within my school. So I did 3 really important things that I think made the biggest impact. So the first being my lesson plans. I created a few lesson plans that I was able to share with my colleagues. I found resources that were available to me from my county, but I also found protocols and other things online that I was able to use, also incorporating some of the information from those books that I mentioned in the previous slide. The next thing that I did was I did some lunch and learn sessions. Now, because we don't all have the same lunch at my school, all of our teachers and are not able to meet at that time. So what we did was we actually did a meeting after school, and it was kind of awesome, the fact that we were so familiar with Zoom technology that we were able to go on Zoom and meet right after school. I took what I learned from reading the text that I mentioned earlier and also the various articles that I had read, and I shared those with my colleagues, and we came up and we were able to talk about so many different things that we could do in our classrooms. And it really actually helped me not only figure out what I needed to do next, but it also made us all realize how important this really was. So what I would totally recommend is giving a survey at the beginning of whenever you're wanting to start this. Figure out like what those needs really are. So your classroom environment and the group of kids that you have may not be the view for your entire school. So, and I actually really noticed that. I noticed that our younger grade levels had much different social emotional needs than our higher grade levels, which completely makes sense when we look at Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. But it's important to ask those questions and help you gather that information that you need so that you know where to start when you're creating lessons or newsletters or whatever you're planning on doing to help advocate and lead others in the right direction. So another thing is to remember that you can use resources from either your county or your own school, or you can use resources from online or from the books, right? I mean, find those and share them with your colleagues. A lot of times I feel like the reason why people are not doing this research is because it takes so long. So if you're able to take the time to do the work, then sometimes that makes it a little easier on everyone. The next big thing that I did was creating newsletters. So these newsletters, I was able to share what I was doing currently in my classroom. I was able to share my lessons, but I was also able to share some really cool articles that I found in relation to what I saw from the surveys that teachers and students had filled out. So if I was noticing that we needed some support with identity, then I would find an article and I would share it. Sometimes I would get responses back with articles from other people. Like the conversations in my school were just totally surrounding social emotional learning, and it was really exciting. And we started to notice a change in not only our kids' behavior, but also just their confidence and the way that they wanted to go about their day-to-day lives. Like they wanted to communicate with other kids. Some of them who were very quiet were coming out of their shells. Our gifted students were beginning to take on leadership roles, and it's been a really great experience overall. So I definitely recommend doing a newsletter and asking for responses back and sharing and collaborating together. From what I've shared, it is evident that gifted children have unique social emotional needs. It is also clear that Georgia has a high population living in poverty. With that being said, it is important for us to recognize the need of social emotional learning in our schools and take a step to advocate for this need. I'd like to share with you a final video to explain how important social emotional learning is.
When I look back at all the important milestones in my life, I'm reminded of one that seemed small but made all the difference. It was the day my second grade teacher introduced us to social emotional learning. I learned about my emotions and what empathy is, how to talk through problems with my classmates, and how to make good decisions. It really helped me understand how to manage all the things on my mind, especially strong emotions. They were often the things crowding my brain, making it hard to think and focus. Sometimes all it took was a breath. And 1, 2, 3, saying, I can do it. When I knew what to do with my emotions, it freed up space in my mind to learn. I became really good at it. I learned how to find my own path and solve all sorts of problems. My social emotional skills have always been there, backing me up. They helped me gain confidence to pursue the things I really wanted, like a spot on the soccer team, that A in biology. They taught me to listen and walk in other people's shoes. And that has unlocked so many doors in my life. 25 years later, I use my social emotional skills every day, especially with my patients. I know what you're feeling. I've been there. Take a deep breath. Social emotional learning. It makes all the difference.
I want to thank you so much for joining me today during this professional learning, and I really hope that you have learned a lot about social emotional human development, the impact socioeconomic status has on SEL, some strategies that you can implement today, and also learning how to lead others. If you could please take a moment to fill out this quick survey about my presentation. Thank you.